All right, guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. That was easy for me to say. There's no thunderstorms out there tonight. There's no bad weather at all, so I shouldn't have any power loss. I was out of
You
power.
just had to say that, didn't you?
I know, but I was out of power until 1:30 the next morning. So,
I have to turn all the other noises off. So if this disconnects me, I'll just come right back.
okay. Anyway, welcome everybody to the. And he just froze. Welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Orrick, and my frozen partner here in the split screen is Sean Williams. You see our our Twitter handles at the bottom down here. Are you back? Not yet.
Yes,
now
sir.
You're back. Okay, now you're back. All right. Sean, why don't you go ahead and pay the bills real quick, and I'll tell everybody what we're going to do once we get started.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us on Under the Dome on our brand new StreamYard toy. You can follow us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. He is Alan Ulrich at 79 Saints, and I am at Drew's Dad 3721. And we're going to get our show's Twitter account worked out just as soon as we possibly can. You can also follow us on iTunes and on YouTube. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so. So.
Before we get to business, can I rant for a moment?
About what?
Well, let me see. How do I say this without being a jackass? Don't rip me off, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm scrolling through Twitter, which I very rarely do these days, but I look down and there is a design of the facade of the Superdome. I said, wow, that looks just like ours. And underneath it said, Under the Superdome. And I said, wait a minute. And somebody is trying to rip us off. I'm all for creative expression, but don't express yourself using my stuff, man.
Yeah, that Nick Underhill, probably.
Alan, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did we post the link?
Yes, we did. The link is posted in the New Orleans Saints group, Crescent City Connection, our group, and Facebook. Under the Dome. I did not post it on Twitter.
Okay.
I'll have to start posting this on Twitter too to get this person's attention. But yeah, it's I believe Nick Underhill said it was a Holland group calling themselves Under the Superdome. He was
well, the account said Saints Brazil.
Okay. All right, then it might be Brazil. Yes, it is because someone asked me if he spoke Portuguese and he said he did not. So, yeah, it's Under the Superdome, and it came out of Brazil. So, I've never heard of this group before. I've never heard of these people before. Had Nick Underhill not posted about it, I wouldn't have even known they existed.
Yeah. Apparently, this was like the third episode of their show. Episodio 3.
Well, it'd be Portuguese, so yeah.
Yeah. I'm all for people doing this. Do your thing, baby. But I think it's kind of
be a little more creative. Don't rip off something that already exists. This is not Saints Pleasant Hour podcast.
Yeah.
We're not going to rip. We're not going to rip off Ralph Marlboro and Andrew Juge's group. So don't rip off ours.
I thought that was very unprofessional, but
yeah, absolutely. All right,
but the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. When you want to be the best, I guess you got to chase after the best.
Yeah, well, there's difference between flattery and imitation and out and out ripoff, and that was a ripoff. Real quick before we get started, I wanted to say one other thing. Don Shula Head coach of the Miami Dolphins passed away yesterday at the age of 90. I did not realize he was that old. And I say that in the most complimentary manner possible because I had seen him in interviews as recently as 2013, 2014. He did not look that old. I was thinking he was maybe in his 70s. And of course, you know, he was wheelchair bound and so forth. And, you know, I just have to say, you know, aside from living an incredibly full life, how good I thought he looked as late as his most recent public appearances. And it's a testament that this is a man who had 2 losing seasons his entire 33-year coaching career. He had been to 5 Super Bowls. 6 Super Bowls, 6, because I forgot about the Baltimore Colts. Of course, his most famous loss was Super Bowl 3 to Joe Namath and the Jets, but his most famous win was Super Bowl 7 when the Miami Dolphins, the 72 Dolphins, completed the perfect season, going 17-0. And although the Patriots came close, no one has ever duplicated that. So all the people who sit there and say they never played anybody, they only played 3 teams with winning records, they didn't do anything.
Doesn't matter.
All I can say is well, how come nobody else has done it?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. It's so easy to do. How come no one else has done it? And
you look back on the career of Don Shula, and there was, you know, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about something like, say, for example, Major League Baseball and how long a history it has, comparatively speaking, the NFL's history is somewhat brief because it hasn't been around for that long a time. But you look back at a lot of the key moments in the history of this sport, and in some way, shape, form, or fashion, Don Shula was part of a lot of them. Like you said, 2 or 3 losing seasons in his entire two losing seasons in his entire coaching career. The only coach to ever lead a team to a completely undefeated season, Super Bowl titles, coaching arguably one of the most incredible performers at quarterback that the league has ever seen up to that time, and Dan Marino. And I think it was a testament to his coaching style, ability, whatever you want to call it, that he came from a time that the quarterback was not the preeminent player on the team. It was more of a team effort, so to speak. Like with the 72 Dolphins, you had Greasy and Morrill, and then you had Kick and Zonka and Morris. But to completely change his coaching style to fit the strengths of a player like Marino, that just showed what kind of coach he really was. And lastly, I think probably the greatest testament to the man and his legacy is he did it the right way. He was a fine, upstanding man. You didn't ever hear about him being involved in any kind of negative behavior. He was the type of man that you had absolutely no problem telling your kids that they could look up to him. He was an incredible guy.
Well, he changed the game, and I do mean that literally. Don Shula got on the rules committee in 1978, and he changed the pass interference rules, changing it from prior to 1978. You could chuck a receiver all the way down unless the ball was in the air, it wasn't pass interference. You could grab a guy, throw him on the ground. And that's the kind of things that, Mel Blount used to do with the old Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback. He used to grab receivers and just throw them to the ground because he was so big and so strong. And as a result, patterns were disrupted. You could get to the quarterback a lot easier because his receivers are laying on the ground, or you go waylay them before they get out of the pack. Because as long as the ball hasn't left the quarterback's hand, you could do whatever you want to him. And in 78, they invented the 5-yard chuck rule, and that's the rules that we live by today. It's been refined since then, but that was Don Shula who led that game, because at the time, prior to 1978, it was not uncommon to have 14-7 ball games, 17-20 ball games, that kind of thing, where it was very hard to score unless you had a powerful running game. This opened the game back up to passing. And like you said, he changed his style from a brutal power football game that he had under Zonka and Kick and Morris to a wide open passing attack that he had with Dan Marino and the Marks brothers, Clayton and Duper. And don't forget Nate. I just lost his last name. I had it. It's not Jackson. It's oh man, it'll come to me. Nate. No, Nat Moore. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nat Moore. I had to think about it. But anyway, he went to the more wide open. And ironically, because he didn't have a running game, he never did win another Super Bowl, even though he went with David Woodley in 1982 and then Marino in 84. If he would have been able to get a running game or a running back like a Larry Zonka in the 80s, Marino probably gets a chance to go back to the Super Bowl and maybe win a game. Because
they were on their way to that when they acquired Overstreet, but his tragic death, that was probably about as close as they ever came.
Yeah. The defense could never get. He had Bill Arnsparger when he came back in 82, the Killer Bees defense. That's because the defense had so many B-name players. You had, the brothers, Blackwood brothers, Lyle and Kyle Blackwood. You had
Baumhauer.
I kept wanting to say AJ Dewey because he was the big guy. A friend of mine told me she was his cousin. So, when Arnsparger left and then became head coach of LSU, and he's still my favorite LSU head coach, by the way, even though you've had more success with other coaches, Bill Arnsparger would be my favorite LSU head coach. Anyway, once Arnsparger left, then you started going through these different defensive coordinators who could never build a defense to get Shula back to the Super Bowl. And ironically, his last 3 or 4 years, I think he had a record of 35-12 or 37-12, something like that. Anyway, it was a winning record, but the fans couldn't take it anymore. They thought he had gone soft. They thought that he just couldn't, he wasn't keeping up with the changes in the game, and they wanted him out. They wanted a change. They wanted something different. And what's happened since then? The Dolphins were never as dominant.
No.
Once Shula was gone, and you've gone through Jimmy Johnson, you've had
Parcells.
Parcells wasn't the head coach, but he was a talent evaluator for the Dolphins. But I mean, you've gone through a lot of well-known coaches or coaches who've had success elsewhere, and the Dolphins, we've seen it this year. 2 years ago, 4 years ago, they went 1-16, 1-15.
Yeah.
That was what it was like before Shula. So that just shows you the impact the man had on the game and how fans didn't realize how good they had it until he was gone.
Which is usually the way that it happens.
Yeah.
When you have enough success, and God, I hate to say this, but there's gonna come a point in time that it's very likely that we'll experience the same thing once.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Brees retires and everybody. Look, when you lose a player like Drew Brees, unless you have an heir apparent waiting in the wings, a la Montana to Young, Favre to Rodgers, that sort of scenario. When you lose a franchise quarterback like a Drew Brees, it's going to involve losing. And anytime there's losing, the rabid fan base, which is something that this team is absolutely known for, they're going to have to find somebody to blame.
Well, yeah. I mean, you saw this at the end of the Jim Mora years. Now, it can be argued that Mora kind of ran his course. The teams weren't as good. And I thought personally that the decisions they made in 1994 and 95 really set up for Mora quitting in 96, letting Morton Anderson go, letting Sam Mills go, getting the offense up to speed with Jim Everett, Michael Haynes, and then letting Wesley Walls and our buddy, Quinn Early go in favor of Torrance Small, and passing on drafting Eddie George, thinking that Mario Bates was still going to be the guy who's going to carry your team as a running back. Those kind of decisions they made the 95 off season going to the 96 season, that kind of led to Mora's departure. And that happens to coaches. People think that a coach kind of ran its course, and we got a feel of that during the 7 and 9 seasons with Sean Payton, where people were actually talking about, well, maybe, it's time for him to go. Maybe he can't do much more than what he's at. We need a coach that's going to build a defense. We need a coach, whatever the weaknesses may be, because that's what they were saying about Shula. And what happened after Mora, we ended up with Mike Ditka. What's happened after Shula left? Yeah, you got Jimmy Johnson. He was the romantic coach because of the University of Miami and so forth. But what happened, Marino's last game, they got blown out in the playoffs.
Jimmy Johnson, in my opinion, is great at, and don't misunderstand me. Jimmy Johnson is probably one of the greatest coaches to ever be in this game. He really is. The things that he did in Dallas are just mind blowing. But it was always my opinion when he went to Miami, his heart wasn't in it. He was more interested in going fishing than he was playing ball. And that's just my opinion.
I think the game kind of changed on him, and he was responsible for the change. When he went to Dallas, people still looked at doing things in the NFL the way Parcells, Ditka, and Walsh were doing it. And Jimmy Johnson said, you know what? I've been in the college ranks. I won with speed. I'm going to draft fast players. I'm not going to draft big, strong guys like like the Bears and the Giants and the Redskins. I'm going to draft fast guys. I'm going to have some big guys now, but my defense will be built on speed. My offense is going to be built on speed. And then he found a guy like Mike Lynn to come along and give him a ton of draft picks for one player. And he parlayed those picks into more picks because he invented that chart, the point value chart that we still use today.
Yeah. He coached the professional game like it was a college game, and nobody had done that before.
Right. So he was able to parlay so many of those picks into good draft picks that he built the core of his team within 2 or 3 drafts. And that's the Dallas team that went on to win all those titles. He couldn't do that in Miami. The game had caught up to the coaches, and all the general managers caught up to him by that time. By the late 90s, they had already figured out all the things he had done. He wasn't going to be able to parlay a player into multiple picks. And Marino was going to win you enough games that you will always be picking in the back half of the draft. So that was Johnson's problem. I agree. I don't think his heart was in it like it was for Dallas. I think the only reason why he took that job, aside from the fact being in his hometown of Miami, he just wanted to try and show up Jerry Jones one more time.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that brings us into the conversation I wanted to get into tonight that we got cut off last week, talking about the draft. And I wanted to talk about the undrafted free agents. We kind of talked about the three players they did draft. The offensive center, Ruiz, Bond, the linebacker, and Trotman, the tight end. Trotman, I think, is going to be an interesting project. I do think he plays right away, but I'm curious to see how he develops, because what you think you're going to get with this guy looks like a Jimmy Graham, almost a Jimmy Graham clone. Big kid, former basketball player. He's got to learn how to run routes a little bit better. Good soft hands, blocks people out, probably is a good red zone threat. But we really didn't address the receiver position or the cornerback position in the draft. So we kind of went through the undrafted pool to get those guys. And what I want to ask you tonight, is there an undrafted free agent you're looking at that you think, okay, this is a guy we should look for to see how he does in camp and see if he makes his team?
To be honest with you, what few that I had, the limited list that I've been able to get to and see so far, nothing really jumps off the page at me.
Well, there's three guys I'm looking at. Calvin Throckmorton, the offensive tackle from Oregon. I've said this over and over and over again. We only have one tackle, I think, third tackle on the roster. We really don't have any. We have Will Clapp playing the third tackle. We really don't have that swing tackle on this roster. Andres P can kick over if somebody's injured, but I think Throckmorton is somebody to watch. I had his stats up earlier, and I've got about 5 screens open, so I don't want to open up too many more. But he's got the size, and he came from Oregon, so he has the agility. Yeah, okay, his stats are 6'5", 318. He needs some time in the weight room, but I think he's going to be an interesting person to see if he can make this team as a third tackle.
Yeah.
The other guy, some people are talking up a lot of Malcolm Roach, the defensive tackle from Texas. He's really got a challenge, to make this team, because we're so deep at defensive tackle.
Yeah, that's going to be a crowded room right there.
Yeah, and he's really more of a run stuffer. So you're looking at getting him in the zero technique behind Malcolm Brown. But, you've got Shy Tuttle, who made the roster last year and beat out Taylor Stallworth. So, it's going to be tough for him to get in. But I like his potential. He is probably going to be somebody who's going to be in the practice squad in the beginning and may come in time of injury. We'll just have to see on him. And then the last guy I'm interested in watching, there's 2 of them. There's the 2 receivers we got. Marquez Callaway, the receiver from Tennessee, and Juwan Johnson, who is the younger brother of a guy that a lot of people are like, wait, he was on the Saints? Do you remember George Johnson from 2017? Yeah. He's the guy who blocked the punt in the Minnesota playoff game. Yeah. George Johnson came in, I want to say week 13 or 14, and he had 5 sacks. It was unbelievable. And Ralph Marlborough referred to him as the unicorn because, the odds of finding a defensive lineman on the street that late in the season to come in and have 5 sacks, that was amazing. And then, of course, he blocks the punt. So, again, for a player like Malcolm Roach, there's your opportunity. you make the practice squad, you sit in the practice squad. When the injuries happen, you've got a good chance to come back and play during the regular season. Somebody that you did not expect to make the team has an impact late in the season. But Dwan Johnson and Marquez Callaway, those are guys with some size to them. They're not speed guys. They're more possession guys, but that's kind of what we're looking for as a slot receiver, because you've got to think, you've got Thomas and you've got
Sanders.
Thank you. Sanders on the outside. Taysom Hill is still going to play wide receiver, so, and Traquan Smith, we got to see what we got with him. So you're really looking, and then of course they're talking about trying to incorporate Dante Harris a little bit more as wide receiver, as small as he is, but getting a physical guy that can come in and play some possessions on third down to convert third downs. Those are guys I think we need to really watch. Yeah. The rest of the guys, there's a punter on there. He's a leg for camp. One of the things, that's going to make it hard for any rookie, undrafted player, even free agent to adjust to this team is the fact that there are no OTAs.
Yeah.
This weekend should have been a mini camp.
Yeah.
No mini camp. You're not going to have a mini camp at the end of the month either, at the end of May.
See, I had a conversation about this last night. You see a team like right off the top of my head, for example, Tampa Bay. They're stacking all this talent. Well, you're looking at a very realistic possibility that every team in the league will have a month to prepare for a football season.
We're going old school.
Yeah.
We're going old school, using training camp to install the offense.
And it very, very easily could be a situation where teams find it convenient to shortcut the preseason games as well.
Yeah.
You're going medieval on this stuff, man. It's going to be which team is able to optimize the time that they have, and that's when a team like the Saints, for example, you're not having a lot of turnover at positions for those teams, and it's not going to be so much incorporating new players as it is going to be sharpening up what you have.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I think, A, they didn't draft a whole heck of a lot of players, and B, you didn't see as much activity in free agency as you normally would after the draft. You see a lot of talented players that are still sitting out there that teams are really hesitant on signing, because getting those guys up to speed in the playbook is going to take a long time.
Yeah.
So you may see some activity at training camp or around training camp when injuries start happening and things like that, but I don't think you're going to see some of these guys get signed. And, you look at a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, who's still sitting out there with a very unrealistic now figure in his head, about how much he thinks he's worth. And teams are like, I'm going to pay you, but I'm not paying you that much.
Well, it goes back to the old adage, I may not be paying you what you think you're worth, but I'm paying you more than you was making sitting at home.
Yeah. And the other thing to me, a lot of people are going to probably laugh at this, but a guy like Eli Apple has a better chance of getting re-signed by the Saints than bringing in an outside cornerback who may be more talented, only because you don't have to teach Eli Apple the defense.
That's right. You just need to teach him how to play the position.
Yeah. Well, you got to limit his exposure. You have to limit his exposure out there. So, yeah. And I think that's also why the Saints went with Jameis Winston as a backup, as opposed to going with, Andy Dalton got released 2 days later after we signed him, but going with someone like the former Ravens quarterback and Broncos quarterback, Flacco, because at least with Winston, he's young and he knows the NFC South, and you could kind of school him up, coach him up a little bit. He understands some of the basic concepts that you're probably going to run just from his film study of playing you twice a year.
Yes.
So that's kind of how you have to look at some of these moves they're making. There are some receivers out there, NFL receivers out there, veteran receivers I'm interested in to see if we could possibly get these guys if someone gets hurt, just as a possession receiver, not somebody that's going to go over the top, but just a possession receiver like a Taylor Gabriel, maybe Rashard Higgins, because he's young.
Did I hear correctly that Megatron signed with Tampa?
No.
Thank you, Jesus.
That never happened. I don't know. I heard some other old retired players talking about coming back, and I just no. Tampa's been interesting.
They're stacking a lot of talent, and there again, you're going to have to incorporate this talent into a game plan, and you can't do that outside of the building.
Well, you're trying to rebuild the Patriots, and you forgetting the guy who made the Patriots work isn't coaching on the sideline.
That's right.
That's not a slight to Bruce Arians' ability, but
Bruce Arians ain't Belichick.
Well, Bruce Arians isn't running the old Giants offense from the 80s at the that basically that's what that Ron Earhart, that's the offense the Patriots run.
Yeah.
It's just Belichick knows it so well that he's modified it and tweaked it, but it's still basically that offense. Arians is much more of an air raid vertical attack, and you've got people in there who are not. Well, first off, I think it's insane that Gronkowski even got out of retirement to do this, because you look at his physical build just on the Fox pregame shows from last year. He's not the player he used to be. He's taken
at the end of his career in New England. How many years did he play complete seasons?
He hasn't played a complete season, I want to say, since 2013, 2014, something like that.
Bad knees, bad shoulders, those things don't go away.
Exactly. All that does is get aggravated when you get hit, which is why I think that the Tampa Bay Bucks went ahead and exercised the 5th-year option on O.J. Howard, because they're going to have to rely on Howard and Brate. Gronkowski's kind of he's a showpiece to pull out. Get the fans all riled up, get people in the seats. He might catch a pass or two, but he's not going to be your guy. It's going to be out there every week. He's going to get too beat up. Brady. How is Brady going to do a vertical attack? I just can't see it. I see it more horizontal and short passes, because
really in New England, he didn't do the vertical thing since Moss was there.
Right. That was what, 13 years ago, 2007.
Yeah.
He can't push the ball down. He can do that in September, but come December, he's not going to be able to do that.
No.
So.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not bad mouthing Brady, but Father Time is undefeated, man. And you're not stepping into a situation where he had it like he did in New England. Well,
they took care of him in New England. They protected him. it's going to he's going to have to depend on a powerful ground game. Now, the Bucs had a good draft. The Bucs have some talent. They've got the receivers. It's just I'm really curious how Brady fits in or adapts, and how Bruce Arians adapts to Tom Brady, and not having these OTAs, not having these camps where they can work together, and really putting this together virtually via something like this that we're doing here, and in training camp, putting your offense together, given the strengths of this quarterback versus the quarterback you had last year. I don't know how this is going to play out for them. And that's
don't get me wrong. I'm not bad mouthing the Bucs. I think that they've done an excellent job in putting pieces together. But the point I'm trying to make is it's going to, when you're not in the building, you're not having the OTAs, you're not getting to do workouts together. It's going to be hard to get that chemistry built. And there again, you're looking at the very realistic possibility that you may have 4 weeks to establish some sort of team chemistry. And it's not just the Buccaneers. I mean, it's every team in the league.
Well, any team that's got a new head coach or a lot of new pieces, that's going to be the issue, because you just don't have the time to work out all these kinks. You don't have the time to work out the timing with your receivers. You don't have the practice time to sit there and install a complicated offense. You're going to be learning this offense on the fly. And this is all under the assumption. I know what the NFL's been saying, but this is all under the assumption that training camp starts at the end of July, that the Hall of Fame game is 2 weeks later, and there's 4 preseason games, and the season goes on like it's supposed to. Suppose, just because everybody wants to compare it to the Spanish flu, and the Spanish flu had the second wave in the fall, let's just suppose that they have a relapse or a second wave, as they like to call it, in the fall, in September, and they have to cancel games. What happens then? That throws everything up in the air, and it makes it even harder to pull stuff together. Go back to 1982, the NFL strike season, where they canceled 7 games. You had nine full games that were played. I'm sorry. Yeah, 7 games. They canceled 7 weeks of football. So you had 2 games in the beginning, the first 2 weeks of the year. Then you had the break, and then when football came back, you had very little interest in football until December. Then they had a seeding system for the playoffs, and it's why people didn't think much of the Redskins winning that Super Bowl, because they felt like that wasn't a very good Redskins team, and of course the Redskins proved otherwise by going back-to-back years, but still, it was a strange season. And it led to the 87 scab teams, because they weren't going to let 7 weeks pass by without any football on at all. But that may happen. You don't know. So that's all the things that, make this upcoming season so odd.
We're living in unprecedented times, man.
Absolutely.
We have never seen anything like this.
And I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible. I mean, the schedule is supposed to come out on Thursday.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that might? Do you think that could be interpreted as a sign that things could be getting back to normal, or is it just the league trying to do something to generate a little positivity?
I think they got a lot of positive influences from the draft. People really liked it. Aside from the fact that ESPN seemed to think that every single player that got drafted, mom or dad died, or someone in the family died. But
Trey Wingo, man, it was like on a loop.
Yeah.
Every player that, well, now this young man, and I'm going, oh my God.
Well, they always want to show that somebody overcame something to get to this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, is it a drinking game? Okay, if this upcoming player's mom died, do a shot of tequila. If this upcoming player's dad died, do a shot of bourbon or whiskey. You know, I mean, that's what's odd. I mean, that's what made it really, odd this past year. But I think
Of course, a week in advance, Colin Cowherd, as much as I don't like the guy, he was saying this very thing. The NFL is going to try to to use a wrestling term, the NFL is going to try to take this draft and put it over so hard. You're going to see a lot of touchy-feely things. You're going to, you're going to see a lot done to elicit emotional responses in a positive way. And I get it. But I think that, and before I say this, please don't think that I'm making light of any player who had to go through an ordeal like that. I'm really not. I'm not knocking that or taking that lightly or disrespecting.
No, but it becomes like, okay, I know he's become persona non grata now, but Bill Cosby's routine from Bill Cosby himself has always been one of my all-time favorite routines, where he said, talking about his dad and his dad's childhood, and he says, and his dad never told a happy story. It was always, we had, I asked for 50 cents for the school picnic. He told me how he killed a bear with his loose leaf notebook. You know what I mean?
I remember
that's how it got to be. It's like every single player, no one has a happy story. Why we want to hear a happy story.
Yeah.
My favorite highlight of the entire draft, and I shared it on Facebook, is Bill Belichick. He showed up on video just enough so he didn't get fined. So he would sit his dog in the chair in front of the computer. When the camera would come on, his dog's just sitting there. That was perfect. And
I think overall they took a difficult situation, which the league very easily could have put off the draft, but they chose to go forward with it. And the way that they did was magnificent. I mean,
it was interesting to see people's houses. It was interesting to see the coaches and the players, their reaction. Ralph Marlboro had a great line when they showed Joe Burrow's house, and you had that one chair that was covered with a blanket. And he says, "Oh, I know what that is. You got the one chair, it's on TV. It's the Pet's chair. It's all torn to hell. Everybody's got one of those in their house. I've got one. So, I know what it's like. My dog Daisy likes to sit in it all the time. So, if we were ever on TV, you better believe that chair would be covered up." So I get that. And that was funny. And, you see those sort of things. But I think you're going to see something like this with the schedule release. So I guess my question for you about that is, how many nationally televised games do you think the 13-3 Saints will be on this year? And secondly, how many times do you think they're going to match up the Saints in these nationally televised games with big games? I mean, like a Vikings rematch, a 49ers rematch, that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Okay, how many nationally televised? Much like you have made reference to before, I believe that both times that we square off with the Buccaneers, they're going to find a way to put that in prime time. Probably one on a Sunday or a Thursday or Monday night. But
one of them's got to be at the end of the season.
Yeah,
they're going to schedule that. They're going to schedule that at the end of the season.
That will likely be the last game of the season, I think.
Depends. If it's on Monday night, it'll be the second to last week. If it's on Sunday Night Football, it'll be the last week. But I think they're going to try and schedule a Buccaneers Saints game probably in Tampa at the end of the season on national television. Okay.
As far as outside of the division, I don't think that there's really. I wouldn't anticipate the Vikings rematch. It was what it was, and there wasn't that much hype surrounding it. Not like the Rams the year prior. But I think that the rematch with the 49ers, there will be a lot of interest in that because the NFL Network chose that as the second best game of the season last year.
Yeah.
And it really was. It was a fantastic game. I hate that we came out on the short end of the sticks, but I mean, the game was really interesting and really strongly contested between the two teams.
Well, I'm looking at the schedule, the home and away, the teams that were supposed to play. I think that the Bucs game, Vikings probably, the Chiefs game, and the 49ers game are all going to be nationally televised games.
Sure.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see Atlanta get thrown in one.
Yeah,
maybe a Thursday night game.
Over the past, 4 or 5 years, we've had a matchup against Atlanta in primetime every year.
Yeah, because it's a entertaining game.
Yeah.
But we play the Vikings, Chiefs, and 49ers at home. So the 49ers last year was a shootout. Chiefs defending Super Bowl champions. Vikings, you've had the Minneapolis Miracle, and you had last year's game. So they could probably want to throw that one on. That'll probably be a Monday night kind of game. The road games, the only one that sounds interesting that other than the Buccaneers game that could possibly be a nationally televised game is the Raiders game because you're in Las Vegas. But I really don't – I don't think that'll be the one. I'm just counting – I'm thinking about 5 nationally televised games. And I think Falcons, Vikings, Chiefs, 49ers, and on the road against the Bucs. I think those are the 5. I think the first Bucs game will probably be, on Fox at 3:00 with Joe Buck and Troy. I'm drunk as shit. Aikman on on the the America's Game of the Week. But I think the Tampa Bay game will be at the end of the season in Tampa, and I think that's the game they're going to want to have on that because that's going to have all for they hoping for the division title.
Yeah,
and maybe top seed. But I think that's how I see it. We'll find out for sure, though. We're not playing the Cowboys this year, Calvin, unfortunately.
Once again, everybody, until I get this new format thing kind of figured out, I hate that I'm not able to be involved in the live chat. Just know that I love you guys and I miss listening to y'all and reading all your thoughts.
I see it on the side of my screen here, so that's a good thing.
Until I get another device to use as the camera, I have to use my phone for this at this point in time. So we just got to kind of do what we do.
Our road games are the Falcons, Panthers, of course, Bucks, of course, Bears, Broncos, which my little nephew can't wait. They really want to take him to a Saints Broncos game in the Superdome, but they get to play in Denver this year. I'm hoping if they play in Denver, they play early in the season. I don't want to play in Denver in December. No. Detroit, the Raiders, the Eagles, again, that's a game I hope we play early in the season. I don't want to play them late in the year either. But those are the only really harsh weather games we have to worry about because Green Bay, Minnesota plays in a dome, but Kansas City.
We play Green Bay this year?
We play Green Bay in New Orleans.
In
New Orleans. Yeah.
Okay.
So we really have the Bears and the Broncos and the Eagles, the only 3 games that you have to worry about weather-wise.
Well, you can count on one of those being at the end of the season at least.
maybe, as the way the league likes to stack up all your divisional games at the end of the year.
Which I love. When they started doing that, I loved that concept.
Well, it's because you had so many meaningless games at the end of the year, and I know Jim Moore hates that term, but yeah, you had so many meaningless games at the end of the year. People were sitting their starters for the last 2 games. So now that you have divisional games, it actually makes a difference when the division, how soon they can wrap up the division and playoff seeding. So, I would not be surprised to see us open with Atlanta or Tampa, but I really think they want to save those Bucks games for late in the year, because they really the odds are the division race is going to be among Tampa, us, and Atlanta.
Yeah,
and
in my opinion, that order is Saints, Bucks, Falcons, and Panthers. Mm-hmm. Not sliding the Panthers, but they're absolutely in rebuild right now. So,
and I would be shocked if we're the first game that Thursday night against the Chiefs. I don't see that happening. No. I think it's more like that they're probably going to either match up the Titans with the Chiefs again, or match up the 49ers with the Chiefs, because if I think that's the kind of game they want to have for that opening, that Thursday before the season starts.
Well, I remember back that it used to be the opening night was always it started being on a Thursday night.
It is,
mm-hmm. And they always matched up the 2 teams from the Super Bowl. For several years, it was like that.
They did that, or they did teams that you wanted to see in the Super Bowl, like whoever played in the championship game at lost. That's why I said I could see Tennessee going. I could see, let's see, who was it was the 49ers, and who else in the NFC championship game?
Packers.
49ers and the Packers. Okay. So you could have Chiefs Packers, you could have something like that.
So that wasn't even a game.
No, that's why I couldn't really remember it, because the Packers really, they shouldn't have even been in there.
No.
They lucked out and got that second seed, and that made all the difference in the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
I'm interested to see how this goes, because, like I said, they're going to plan for this all to be the schedule to be, and the season to begin like it's supposed to. But I'm really curious to see how they lay out the schedule. The cold weather games, that's the only ones I'm going to be watching for, and how many nationally televised games we have. That's the only 2 things I'm really interested in. All right, last question for you.
All right.
So the Saints signed Jameis Winston 2 days after the draft, which protected their ability to get a comp pick. You have to have lost so many free agents before a certain deadline, and then once you've passed that deadline, if you sign any other free agents, it doesn't affect your compensatory picks. Since they've done this formula, the Saints have never received a compensatory pick.
I didn't think they had.
They haven't. They've never done it. So now they qualified for a 3rd-round pick for losing Teddy Bridgewater, and a 6th-round pick for losing AJ Klein. Okay, that's the value they assigned to that. Now, on draft day, the Saints traded the 4th, 5th, and 6th-round picks to select Trotman at the end of the 3rd. And if you look at the point chart of Jimmy Johnson, they actually didn't pay enough. It was below the value. So for fans that think, oh God, we gave up 3 players for 1, you did, but in the point value system of that draft sheet, you actually got a better draft pick with that 1 player than those other 3 players combined. You can take that for what it's worth. Now, at the end of the 7th round, the Saints suddenly jump back on the clock. They were on the phone with Tommy Stevens. Tommy Stevens. And they were talking to him about, okay, if you go on draft, we want to sign you. And they hung up with him. They called him back, and his agent stopped taking the calls. And they found out through the grapevine that the Panthers were considering taking Tommy Stevens in the end of the 7th round. So the Saints traded their regular 6th round pick because they knew they were getting a comp pick to make up for it. Traded their regular 6th round pick to get back into the 7th round to take Stevens. And allegedly, Sean Payton did that to troll the Panthers because he's like, oh, you think you're going to get my guy? The hell with you. We'll make the trade, grab him. I got him. You ain't got anything now. Now, 2 days later, Karen, who I will call Pro Football Talk in this regard, Karen gets on the phone and wants to speak to the manager about how teams are playing with and skirting around the rules regarding comp picks. They're counting on getting these comp picks, so they're playing with the rules, knowing not to sign a free agent until after the deadline passes, which is what any intelligent person would do. And the league is now going to have to look into this. So, of course, now that the Saints qualify for a 3rd and 6th round pick, the league got to look into this. And all because Sean Payton made that trade for Tommy Stevens in the 7th round, knowing he was going to be able to keep his 6th round pick anyway. So he's playing with house money. So my question for you is, how do you take all this stuff?
People have way too much time on their hands. Number one, first and foremost, looking at it realistically, how in the world are you going to prove that the only reason that the Saints drafted this player was to spite Carolina and to show that they could? How are you going to prove that? Jeez, man, come on.
Well, and it's no different to me than, remember back when free agency first started.
Yeah.
June 1st was like a big deal. That was a huge date because that was the date that they were going to be able to legally cut players and not have the bulk of the salary count against the cap. That was your discount day. So they would wait to cut players on June 1st. Well, June 1st has now become a figure date, not a real cut date. They cut people way earlier than that and designate them as a June 1st cut. And no one said shit about this.
No.
They really haven't. So that's, to me, that's what's going on with this stuff, with the whole comp pick and waiting to sign Winston until the day after the deadline passes on Monday, so it doesn't count against your compensatory picks. I mean, that's all this is. So
the only time people want to complain is when somebody is creative with the rules and regulations and it bites them in the butt.
Right. And to me, it's just, it's such a silly thing. To read Pro Football Talk even come out about this, Tom Florio writes this stuff, and that's when people start calling him Karen, because it's like, really, all the teams do this, but now you're going to raise a stink because the Saints should have signed Jameis Winston before the draft. You're going to raise a stink because the Saints made a trade into the 7th round, so they're not really going to lose a 6th round pick.
It's an interesting analogy, but it's in a lot of ways, this is a mirror image of the Bounty Gate thing. The Saints weren't doing anything that every other team in the league was doing.
Oh, I've already shared that video 100 times, but if for you guys that haven't heard it, go to YouTube, go type in ESPN Smash for Cash. and they talk about the exact thing that the Saints were running in 2012 under Greg Williams. It's before the Super Bowl, and it talks about players having side bets based on big plays, not injuring players, but making big plays and getting extra cash for it. So, smash for cash, ESPN smash for cash. You'll see the story. It's exactly what the Saints were doing. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm not going to get off on a tangent about Bountygate because it still makes my blood boil, and it took about about 6 or 8 years before we could dig our way out from under all the ramifications that came to pass because of that.
You lost the 2012 season, and you basically lost 1 year of that team's ability to go back to the Super Bowl. So, and
then you had a player a few years down the road after that. You had a player that sidestepped the rules, broke the rules, and then he compounded that by interfering with the investigation of him breaking the rules. And he was suspended for the first 4 games of the season. And by the time that he played in the Super Bowl that year, they made it every news agency, every person that reported on this game, they couldn't say enough about how much of a vindication it was for Roger Goodell to have to hand him that trophy after what he did to him. And
yeah, I know. Well, Tom Brady and Tom Brady and the rest of that group didn't have a lawsuit pending against them. So, Chad wants to know if you're rocking the Falcons Beats headphones, Sean.
I am not. They're red though. They really are.
But it's just like the overtime rule. They had to change the overtime rule after 2009.
Because we denied Brett Favre his destiny.
He was going to throw another interception to Tracy Porter. I don't know why they even brought it up. Don't turn the ball over 8 times. Every time I hear a Vikings fan whine about, because I don't whine about the Minneapolis Miracle. There's nothing to whine about.
No,
we lost because we missed a tackle. I'm not going to whine about that. There's nothing to whine about. It's a mistake we made. Yeah. But to hear the Vikings fans, y'all tackle Brett too hard. Y'all are not supposed to hit the quarterback. Y'all are supposed to let him complete passes all over the field. Don't turn the ball over 8 friggin' times. Oh,
yes,
God.
We did.
I know his name is persona non grata, but I tell you what, that Darren Sharper in that playoff game, in that NFC Championship game, go to about the second quarter, about midway through the second quarter. You watch Darren Sharper come out of the secondary on a blitz. He comes in clean. That he waits for that hold up, comes in clean, hits Brett Favre in the chest. The NFL Films version is from behind Favre, so you can see him coming. And his chest caves in around the hit. His arm falls forward. It's in slow motion. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I know I'm not defending anything that the dude did off the field and what he did after the Saints. I'm only talking about that season. And
I've always
that hit just I could watch that again and again. And I like Brett Favre. I like Brett Favre, but I mean that hit was the hit for me in that game.
I've said a million times, and I'll say it a million more. I don't condone or justify anything that Darren Sharper did off the field. But if you look at it in abstract terms, you separate what he did on the field. Without Darren Sharper, that Saints team very easily could not have made that Super Bowl run.
No, I've always said that.
He set the table and set the tone for that entire defense the whole year.
The turnovers that he generated and made, and the defensive scores he made, he and Tracy Porter, that's the difference between them and the 2009 team. And honestly, I think that's the difference between them and the 2018 team.
Yeah.
if you could hit and get to Goff the way we were hitting and got to Favre, there's no way Goff at the end of that game is playing the way he was playing. As second year quarterback, getting hit like that would really affect him in that game. He would make a lot more mistakes. We would get the turnovers, and then we just didn't get the turnovers. And the same thing with the 2011 team. I've seen it too many times, but I mean, just a tenth of a second sooner, Harper, that ball comes between the 4 and the 1, and even if he doesn't catch it, he just knocks it down or makes it incomplete. That team goes to Super Bowl as well. That's all the ultimate what ifs. But anyway, I just found that interesting that story is tried to surface a little bit, and it just becomes a joke after a while. And it's like, you screwed us in 2018, then you make fun of us for whining about bad calls in the game, obvious pass interference that you missed. So rather than do fix it and do good pass interference reviews, you take my brother's attitude when it came to cutting the grass, do a job so shitty they will never ask you to do it again. That's how my brother got out of cutting the grass. True story. I don't know if he's on here still, but if he is, I can tell you for a fact, when we were growing up, see, my dad never asked me to do anything. I just knew my job is to go out there and do it. Come Saturday morning, I'm watching my cartoons still, and I'm 10 years old, and I'm still watching cartoons. I'm watching my Saturday morning cartoons. I hear my dad go in the back. I'm waiting. He comes walking out in the grass cutting shorts. Goes out the garage. I hear the garage door open. I hear the lawnmower start up. I know I got about 20 minutes. I got to be out there raking because, this is old-fashioned lawnmower. There's no bag. We're blowing that shit everywhere. So I got to go out there and rake. So eventually, when I turned 12, I got enough ass now that I can push a lawnmower. So it's my job to cut the grass. Now, my dad had, I don't know what you call it, but it's like meatloaf grass. I mean, it's grass. Let's see, get my hand in front of the screen here, about yay thick, okay? So the wheels are like on 4. So you got to be careful cutting the grass, and he's going to edge too. He used to edge because we had sidewalks everywhere. So he edged. So, when you're young, you got to rake and sweep. When you're older, you got to go cut the grass. So, again, my dad never asked me to, because if I didn't get out there, that door was flying open. I heard my full name get called out. It was not going to be pleasant.
Yeah.
And it was never Friday evening. Saturday at 11 in the morning. So at noon, because we cut all the damn trees down because my dad wanted grass. So we cut all the trees down. So it's hot as hell. And I'm out there raking and sweeping. There was no blowers back then. This is old school stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, so now I'm responsible for cutting the grass. So I'm cutting the grass. So I'm getting out there earlier because I'm not going to sweat my ass up. You all right over there? Don't get nervous.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut my grass, so don't worry about it. So anyway, so it's now I'm getting out there at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning cutting the grass. I'm the asshole cutting grass at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, so people are mad at me. Anyway, so now my brother's trying to sleep in because Saturday's his day off. From his rough week of school. My brother's gonna get so pissed I'm telling all these stories. Anyway,
poor Danny.
I go, oh, poor Danny. So I go, I'm cutting the grass. I get to the side yard where his bedroom window is. So now I'm me. That's probably the most cut grass of the whole yard. I'm going back and forth under that window with the lawnmower. And he's not waking up yet. So I start tapping on the window. And we have blinds on the old 1980s blinds, the thin blinds. Yeah. Okay. So we got blinds. All of a sudden, the blinds get yanked open. There's this mad face looking at me, and I just go like this. Come outside. It's time to come outside. So he comes outside, and man, he starts raking. And my dad had an old school metal rake that he got from Western Auto back in the day. All right. That rake lasted like everything else in my parents' house, lasted 20 years or more till my brother got a hold of it. Somehow he broke metal blades. I still have not figured out how he did this, but he would rake so hard, he'd yank up some of the grass with it, and he's breaking metal blades off of this rake. I to this day, I don't know what the hell he did, but that's how he did it. And then when it was his turn to cut the grass, when you got to the edge, where you had to edge, because my job was to edge now, because my dad never trusted my brother with the edger, because he probably would just gone straight across the yard and cut a good sized divot, because I could go in a straight line. You know, I was not. I could follow orders, you know, straight line. So anyway, so I'm edging. So my brother let the wheels on the side drop off onto the sidewalk. So you got that big hunk of grass that's, you know, that big. He's letting the wheels drop off the side, and he just cuts the hell out of the yard. I mean, it's like a blind man went with a pitching wedge through our yard. It was like big hunks of divots blowing out the side of the lawnmower and everything else. That was the last time I think my brother ever had to cut the grass. My dad went, "What the hell happened out here?" I pointed at him. I couldn't handle it. It slipped. So once again, like I said, going back to this whole story, you do a job crappy enough, they will never ask you to do it again. So the moral of the story is I'm the idiot who did the good job. So it was my job to take care of this. My brother was a smart one. Do a crappy job, and they'll never ask you to do it again. He did that with washing cars. My dad would come out, his favorite word was holidays. Look at all the holidays, all spots where, you know, when you're washing a car, you got these dirt spots left. He used to call them holidays, all the holidays on the car. My brother would like run across with the soap and then come across the other way, the whole length of the car. I'm breaking up into quarters like you're supposed to, you know, and he's leaving soap streaks that dry in the sun on the glass. And my dad come in, "What the hell happened out here?" Genius. Because I'm the idiot who would do a good job. So yeah, we'll get Alan out there, do it again, you know, because I get the Comet on the brush and I'm scrubbing the little white wall tires. Nobody has white wall tires anymore. I'm scrubbing the white wall tires so it's white like it's brand new, because like it's my car. You know, this is Oldsmobile Delta 88. I'm doing the white wall tires. They got the wire spokes. I'm cleaning all that crap out. Like, you know, I'm a professional detailer because I don't do half-ass. You know, my brother does whole ass, but you know, that's another story entirely. So yeah, that's why I ended up doing all the work. And my brother was the genius who got out of it all, because don't ask Danny to do it. He'll tear it all up.
We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I'm sorry to cut it short, but it's time to make the donuts for me.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'm back in the beautiful. I need a longer cord for that thing.
That's what they're calling it now?
Back in the beautiful Two Dudes Studios again. It's great to be back. Hope everybody's doing okay. Thank you guys for joining us. You can follow us on Facebook at Under the Dome Podcast, and that's not Under the Superdome.
No, Under the Dome.
You can follow us on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles right there underneath our names. Follow us on iTunes and on YouTube. And as always, thank you guys so much for being a part of what we do. We love you guys, and we appreciate the fact that you choose to spend your Tuesdays with us.
Absolutely. If you want to hear more stories about the adventures of me and my brother growing up, I've got a ton of them. I've got stories. I could tell stories about family vacations that we went on. I could tell stories about my brother trying to get in the Guinness Book of World Records. I could tell all kinds of things. I mean, stories about my brother. One real quick. I know you got to go, but one real quick. Okay, so we get a pair. My brother gets a pair of glasses. All right, and he had an eye patch over his eye, and I'll have to post this picture to show it to you. He had a lazy eye, so the old way they used to treat that, they put an eye patch on your good eye, so your other eye becomes stronger. Well, he got a pair of glasses. He had to have these glasses, okay? Had to have them. Well, they were expensive, more expensive than the glasses my dad wanted to buy. So my dad said, "You do something to these glasses, that's your ass," kind of thing. You know, I was raised by a German, you know, so that's you get that kind of threat. So anyway, first day my brother has the glasses, pops the lens out on the good eye, and he loses it, has no idea. So he fakes it for 3 days with the lens on the patch eye and no glass on the good eye. Okay, so like the guy from Young Frankenstein, you know, with the arm. If you see Young Frankenstein, you know who I'm talking about. So yeah, he's got the glasses on the good eye. So my mom is sitting there. He's at the dinner table. My mom looks at him and she's looking at the glasses. She's like, "Danny, let me see your glasses." And I knew, because I saw it the first day that he lost them. So he takes them off. She puts her hand through. She's like, "How long's this been like this?" "About 3 days." You know, so but he was afraid to tell anybody that, you know, he was walking around with no glass he's blind, you know. So yeah, so I got 100 stories like that. I could tell you all kinds of adventures about my brother. So anyway,
I have stories like that involving my younger sister and I. She's probably one of my very, very closest inner circle, and we made a trip to New Orleans together for WrestleMania. And if you've ever seen the movie The Incredibles, the animated movie, there's one part in there where they're in this mobile home going through town, and
oh yeah,
you know, and one of them sitting over going, "No, no, no," and you know, he takes the exit and it turns and rolls. That's like riding with my sister in New Orleans. I played the movie and filmed that section and posted it on Facebook, and said, "This is what it's like to ride with Angel in New Orleans." And she posted under it the Ken Young, but the I forget his name. He was in what was the name of that movie? Anyway, the tagline on the thing that she posted was, "But did you die?"
Oh yeah, from The Hangover. Yeah,
The Hangover. Yeah.
Did you die? Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. So if anytime, you know, we have to have a music show, we have to have just tell story hour, because I'm just like you. I'm the older brother. I'm a little over 3 years older than my brother, so you know, I got to see a lot of this stuff firsthand, and it was always hilarious. But and my kids have all heard it a dozen times or more, because you know, it's something that gets brought up. My family still laughs about it. But anyway, yeah, that's the advantage of being an older brother. I got plenty of stories about that. I even tell you stories related to football with my brother too. So
I've heard some of those.
Yeah, I told the Thanksgiving game. Yeah, that was rigged. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll talk some more. I mean, you know, there's no training camps. I mean, no mini camps. So we're going to have to fill up the time somehow. So we're going to bring up some other stuff. And yeah, Calvin, 12 is a big difference. Yeah, Calvin says he's 12 years older than his brother.
Well, I'm a big brother and a little brother. I have a brother. I have a brother that's 2 years older and a sister that's 4 years younger.
Well, then I'm starting getting into my dad's stories. If I start telling my dad's stories, I think I have a brother somewhere in the Far East when he was in the Air Force of Japan. Because my dad's stories, I have to have one. I mean, there's no way that man My dad was cool. He really was. I just say his Air Force book is full of pictures of beer labels and pictures of Japanese women. That's all that's in there. So I got a half Asian brother somewhere. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Peace out, baby.